What's the most surprising thing a kid asked for Christmas from Mall Santa? Story 1. My uncle was a Santa and he told me that one year a kid asked for a coffee maker because he wanted to start his own Starbucks coffee stand instead of a lemonade stand. Apparently business was not very good as a lemonade stand, but he noticed a lot of adults drink coffee, so he figured he'd make coffee. That kid is probably a millionaire now. Story 2. I'm a teacher. I had one of my most difficult, obstinate, button-pusher kids come in at recess to talk to me. He said he was worried he would not get what he really wanted, to be a real elf, move to the North Pole and make all the presents. He had tears in his eyes and was the most sincere I had ever seen. Made me really appreciate how hard life was at home. He just wished for a way out. Story 3. My friend's dad used to be a Santa. He couldn't stop crying after a shift one time. When we finally got him to say what was wrong, he said a little girl told him she didn't want any item for Christmas. She wanted a new daddy who won't touch her. Her dad was there with her. My dad's friend had to enact the emergency protocols. The girl didn't want to talk to the police about it unless Santa was with her. He heard some tough things. Story 4. Many years ago, a small girl would not tell her mother what she wanted for Christmas. Mom told me the problem and asked me to tell her after the kid jumps off my lap. The little girl hopped up and told me she wanted some makeup and some breast. Okay, now I have to tell Mom. Story 4. Not a Santa, but I have been a Mrs. Claus for the last few years and I always ask the kids what they want while we do our crafts. My favorite was this 4 to 5-year-old girl that told me she wanted one of those loud horns. She made a gesture like she was using those can pocket horns and she made a little horn sound. She said she wants to use it to wake up her baby brother when he naps in the daytime so he knows what it's like. Story 6. Not a mall Santa, but my fire department does a Santa visit to all the houses in my town. We have a few guys dress up as Santa and we drive around going house to house in the fire engines. One year when I was Santa, we went to a house with a married couple and 2 kids. The woman is clearly pregnant. The daughter, about 10 to 12 years old, creeped the hell out of me. I asked her what she wanted for Christmas and she looks at her, I assume stepmom, and says deadpan, I want the baby to die. Story 7. One kid got on my lap and asked me if I could give him a bag of wiggly rice. I asked him what that was and he said he ate some off a piece of chicken he found in the backyard. He said it was so yummy he wishes he had a whole bag of it. Story 8. I was an assistant manager for a mall Santa with no air programs. There was a special needs 20-something black guy that would come by nearly every day. He easily weighed more than 250 pounds, so we did eventually convince him to sit next to Santa instead of on his lap. Every time he had to remind Santa what he wanted for Christmas. His list was Home Alone on DVD, Straight Outta Compton on DVD, and Prince's 1999 album on CD. Santa was awesome and brought him the Prince CD a few days before Christmas. Story 9. This is a grim one. My ex's dad owned a restaurant and I worked there part-time in my late teens, so I witnessed this. Christmas Eve we're usually really busy, so to earn more money, his wife came up with the idea to pretend to be Santa for a few hours on Christmas Eve and charge something like £2 per kid. This one dad came up to my ex's dad was Santa. Not me, and paid the money for his kid and then went to the toilet with his other child, a baby, leaving the kid with Santa. Santa asked the kid what he wanted for Christmas and apparently the kid whispered into his ear, I want daddy to go away. He asked the kid to explain why, and apparently the dad had beaten up the mother a few hours prior and had locked her in the shed in their back garden before taking the kid and his baby sister out to eat because they had been crying hysterically and he was worried the neighbors would hear and get suspicious. Santa then asked the kid for his address and told my ex, who worked in the kitchen, to call the police. I think some police went to the house and then some turned up at the restaurant to arrest the dad. A social worker also came to collect the kids. We never found out what happened to them after that, but it ended up in the local paper and got loads of promotion for the restaurant. Story 10. Not a mall Santa, but once my sister asked Santa if she could have a horse's head and an ice cream cone. She explained that she was gonna paint the ice cream cone the color of a horse, stick it on, mount the horse's head to the wall and tell her friends she slayed a unicorn. She doesn't remember. Story 11. This is one of my worst memories ever. I had helped Santa for almost 20 years, but mostly for private parties and events. I did cover for him many years ago in Little Mall in Belding, Michigan. A young girl came up with a group of kids and didn't even look up at me. I asked her what was wrong. She said I didn't give her what she asked for last year and started crying. I told her I was sorry and would try again this year. She said, "You can't. She asked you to stop Daddy from hurting Mommy and he still did. Now Mommy is gone." I had absolutely nothing to say except I was so sorry. After that group of kids left, I went home sick, took off my suit and threw it away. To this day, I can hardly bear this and I still think about it every Christmas time. Story 12. I have a cringy story about a mall Santa. I was a freshman in college at my local mall. This mall is basically dead, hardly any foot traffic at all unless it's the weekend and I see a mall Santa. I accidentally make eye contact and he waves me over. I walk on over to him smiling and is doing the whole Santa thing. I'm around 22 at this time and I'm playing along for fun to not make it all awkward. His elves, girls around my age, starts talking to me and you can tell they were bored as heck and just looking for someone to talk to. Well anyway, they asked if I wanted to buy a picture with Santa. I was poor as crap at the time and was definitely not paying the $20 for a picture. I started to panic internally because I was like, oh crap, did they just talk to me for the last 5 minutes because they expected me to buy a picture? One of the elves says she bets my parents would love it, and that's when the horrible idea clicked in my head. I looked her in the eye and said, "Oh yeah, sorry, no, my parents are dead," even though they weren't. Dead silence from Santa and the elves. One of the elves pipes in that she lost her dad a year ago, so she knows and understands what it's like. They then talked to me for about 20 more minutes trying to make me feel better. I felt like crap the whole rest of the month and I'll still think about it sometimes and cringe hard. Story 13. Not technically a mall Santa, but my neighbor was a Santa for a community brunch years ago and a little girl asked for a cheeseburger. Not that odd on its own I suppose, but an odd request for the holiday and from such an important and magically being. Story 14. Worked as a Santa or elf before in low-income neighborhood areas. Being in a large city is great, but with it came more problems. My sister-in-law was working with us at the school function and local mall where they held the Santa thing. Downright worse things that make you sad. One kid wanted a door because the police broke his to arrest his dad and took him away. The kid also wanted his dad back. One kid wanted her uncle to stop touching her at night. One other kid wanted running water and food for the house because Mommy didn't have any. I have never volunteered to work there again since, and yes, we did report these things to police as they happened, so there was some good, but dang. Story 15. My kid asked Santa for Thor's hammer. Christmas morning he opens up Thor's hammer. He was so happy. First thing he did was chuck it across the living room and into the kitchen. Dishes smash, glass all over the floor. Kid was freaking pissed it didn't come back to him. The look on his face, pure Christmas devastation. If you've gotten this far and enjoying the content, please leave a comment of your own story. We'd love to make a video of them in the future. Story 16. Not a mall Santa, but it was the Best Buy box for a number of holiday seasons in the early 2000s. One year we set up a chair where you could take a picture with me. Soon it turned into people just telling me what they wanted for Christmas. Sometimes I'd have a stack of $5 gift cards and I'd give them out randomly. One kid sits down and says he wants to kick me in the crotch. The suit was heavily padded and there was a good 10 inches or so from the bottom of the box to my love spuds. Being 19 and wanting to put on a good show, I said sure. Kid wins up and musters the best kick he had. I played it up even though he actually hit my thigh. I remember everyone thinking it was so funny. I loved the early holiday seasons working there. Some of my best memories came from those times. We had a fantastic management team who were like family. Then it all changed and everything went sour. Such is life, I guess. Story 17. Years ago, I was in line with my 6-year-old nephew for his visit with Santa. When Santa asked my nephew what he wanted for Christmas, he said, "Could you get Mommy and Daddy some pajamas? Because they don't wear any." The whole line broke up, including Santa. Story 18. I was the Santa for an office party. It was my first year with the company and apparently the tradition was that the newest guy had to wear the suit. Anywho, skip forward to the party. I'm going around taking pictures with people I barely knew at the time, and then it gets to where presents were being handed out. Now I had sat in the back because the CEO was the one handing out gifts. I didn't want to confuse people where the real money was and minding my own business. This woman, think mid-40s kinda cougar, walks up to me drunk out of her mind and she sits on my lap. Now I'm all for keeping character, so I ask, why hello, what would you like for Christmas? And she says, without hesitation, I'd love for my husband to do me in the rear end while you watched. Now, when presented with the opportunity, I maintained composure and politely declined while attempting to get her off my lap. After she said it's fine, my husband's good with it, let me get him, and that's when she screams out his name at the top of her lungs. I shit you not, the whole party heard and turned to see the new guy with the CEO's wife on his lap. Apparently this wasn't the first time and others had accepted the offer. I still work there. Story 19. My boyfriend is a Santa for private events and has been doing it for over 20 years, so he has a bunch of stories. He was doing a private adults-only party, so all of the ladies were being a bit flirty, but nothing crazy. Santa Baby started playing and the ladies dragged him onto the dance floor. He shimmies a bit and goes to sit back down when a woman grabs him and starts grinding on him. He tries to get away from her in character, but she keeps on grinding and starts to moan. Finally, the hostess notices and gets her away from him, but she kept trying to get to him the rest of the night. The saddest story was definitely when a little kid crawled into his lap and, with a big, sweet smile, asked Santa, "Can you make my mommy love me?" My BF has to hug the kid so he wouldn't see him tearing up and told him that it was a request for a higher power and that he and Mama Claus would pray about it. Kid seemed happy with that response. Story 20. I was Santa for corporate holiday parties one year. I was in my 30s but used a spray for my beard. It looked lifelike and the kids dug it, so did one mom or aunt who threw a kid off my lap and whispered that she wanted Santa to do her from behind while pulling her hair. She didn't seem to be drunk. I was very uncomfortable. Then the meeting planner told me she does that every year. Story 21. I have been Santa for several seasons. I had a special needs young woman ask me to make her boyfriend quit hitting her. I told a lady who was helping me to get the deputy sheriff at the event to come see me. I whispered to him what she had said. He came back 10 minutes later and asked if I would speak to her in a private area. There the deputy and Santa got a clearer but very disturbing picture of how she had been repeatedly abused. In May the deputy let me know the offender had been sentenced to 8 years and the girl had been relocated to a new care facility. Story 22. I remember being in hospitals a lot as a kid with serious stomach issues. I remember asking a mall Santa if I could get better and not pass away once when I was about 8 or 9 years old. When the mall Santa looked at me sadly and said he couldn't do that, almost in tears, I asked if my old dog that passed away as a puppy could be brought back as a zombie so we could both be undead together, and if I could come back as a zombie too so I could stay with my parents so they wouldn't be sad. Looking back, that was really creepy and I think I broke the poor guy's heart. Story 23. I wasn't a mall Santa, but I played one of his elves. I think the worst thing a kid ever asked for was some reindeer sausage. He figured Santa could slaughter one of his reindeer for the venison. Story 24. I was a Santa in 1997 for a small, authentic Old West village. I was 17 at the time and doing some local theater, and the costume lady was asked to find someone to be Santa for the weekend. She told me she thought of me because, well, you're not fat, but you're big. So I put on a cheap costume that didn't fit well and the beard smelled like the last Santa threw up in it, and I waited in a prop shed in the plaza that was normally a sheriff office or something. Tall, skinny, and smelly Santa in a shed sitting on a plastic lawn chair, it was no wonder all the children screamed when they were put on my lap. None of them asked for anything in fact, as they were too busy being scared of me. I had a pair of girls and later a pair of guys from the local Christian high school dressed as elves on the first day to take Polaroids and collect money. On the second day they flaked and I was by myself all day. I charged people money to enter my creepy shed and take pictures of their own kids. Except for one young lady who was probably older than me and severely mentally disabled. Her parents were so apologetic because she was too old, but she sat on my lap and smiled at me with total naked joy. I can still see her face 20 years later. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to Thread Talk for more content like this. Also, don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out. Have a dope day and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers!